Hello everyone. Today I'm going to answer a question I get asked a lot that up until this year I haven't had a ton of experience with, and that is, what are some bright colored flowers that I can grow in a shady part of my garden? So my two rooftop decks are full sun. I mean full sun. I have tried to grow shade and part shade plants up here and fried them to a crisp. Now, up until this point, I have had some pots on the front stairs which probably get about 3 to 4 hours of sun per day. And then we have our Parkway, which is between the sidewalk and the street, which is covered with trees. I will take you down there and show you what they look like right now. Someone did ask for a Parkway tour. She's a work in progress, so don't expect too much. But this year, I also now have a shaded area because of the pergola on the garage deck. So I am looking forward to just gardening in almost a completely different way, trying plants that I haven't really had to grow that many of in the past. So I'm very excited. What I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna go over the varieties that I'm growing, and these are all either full to part shade. I didn't include anything that says part shade to part sun, just in case you are focusing on a very shaded area. And in container gardens, if you're gardening on a balcony in an urban area, you don't really have much control over how much sun your deck is getting, but just because you are a shady garden doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of bright, beautiful colors. I'm also going to link down below a YouTuber and Instagrammer. Her account is 17M2Garden, I believe. She's in France and she has a balcony garden that is all north facing. And she does such an incredible job. You wouldn't think that her garden doesn't get full sun. So I will link that down below, both her channel and her Instagram, if you do want to follow. She's who I send everyone to who wants some shade inspiration. Now, I first just want to quickly go over the different light requirements and what they really mean. Now, some of these do vary based on the source that I've read the information from, but typically full sun means that that spot gets 6 or more hours of direct sunlight per day. Part sun is 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. Part shade is 2 to 4 hours, and then shade is 2 or fewer hours. And I do have some spots in my Parkway especially that are in complete shade the entire time, and I do have some plants that are growing very happily down there. Now, when I am looking for bright colors in a shady spot, there are really two main plants that I go towards. I will go over more at the end of this video, but the two main ones I go for are begonias and impatiens. I'm always on a lookout for those when I go to the garden center. That's what I use in my front pots. I'll put in a picture here of last year. I really loved how they looked last year. And now that I have a shaded border on the garage deck, I have a lot more space to fill. Now, my color scheme is mostly pinks and whites and lavenders down there. So those are the colors that I currently have that I'm gonna go through. But there are so many more colors. There are yellow, there are orange, there are red. I will link down below the different varieties that I'm growing so you can go to their actual websites and see how many colors there are. So I love these. They're usually pretty available, especially impatiens at garden centers. So I highly recommend looking for these if you want some bright color in your garden. So I'm gonna start off with two impatiens. Now, unfortunately, none of these are in bloom when I was ready to film this video, so I will pop in images of how these look when they're actually blooming. But for the most part, these all stay in bloom for me once they start throughout the majority of the season. So this first two that I have are impatiens. They are from the Soprano Proven Winners line. This one is white, and there actually is one impatient on there. I would say these are kind of the standard impatiens that you'll see. These have just like single petals right there around a very tiny center. And I see these all over the city in the shaded parkways. So this one is white. And yes, I am considering white a color because in the garden, for me, green is the neutral and anything that's not green is colorful. Also, white is great in darker areas because it pops so much. The other soprano that I have is violet shades. This is a really beautiful, like magenta-y color. And I'm very excited for this. I think because it is a bit brighter, it will also pop as well, especially mixed in with the white. This is similar, it has just the single petals, but it is really beautiful. Now saying that, I do have other plants that are my favorite. If you really want something that looks beautiful in a shaded area that you wouldn't think would be able to flourish. So I have some impatiens from the Rockapolco line from Proven Winners. This first one here is called Apple Blossom. It's a very, very light pink. They look like roses. In fact, when I was unboxing these, my husband asked if they were roses, and they're not, but they're so beautiful. Just to me, this doesn't say impatient. Obviously it is an impatient, but it just looks like something completely different. So I had these in my front pots last year. I think it was a different variety though, because I had brighter colors, but it was beautiful. Again, bloomed all season long. I absolutely love the Rockapulco line. It's probably my favorite line of impatiens. Also from the Rockapulco line, I have Rockapulco Rose. This is probably gonna be my favorite of that line just because it's bright pink, hot pink, and that tends to be my favorite color. But these, it's the same shape throughout this line, the Rockapulco series, but just the variety of the colors is so fantastic. So this one is gonna be a very hot pink color. And then I also have white. And this one actually says it's an award winner, so that's exciting. But this is gonna be really great. Most of the white colored flowers I'm gonna put on the garage deck, and I'll take you down later and show you what that border is going to look like. But the pergola is black, so having white flowers in there I think is going to look absolutely beautiful. So those are the 3 Rockapulco impatiens. Then I do have 2 begonias, but I only have one here with me. This is the Nonstop Pink Begonia. And these, so the leaves are different compared to the impatiens. These for me tend to be just a little bit shorter in stature as well. They stay a little bit closer to the ground. But the flowers themselves, I think they look fairly similar to the Rockapulco impatiens. They aren't quite as full, but they do have those petals layered on top of each other. So this one is Nonstop Pink. I also have Nonstop White. Every single tag here, I think says part shade to shade. I'm just seeing if anyone says shade only. They do not. And this begonia series of Nonstop, these will be 8 to 12 inches. The Soprano line of impatiens, those are 10 to 15 inches. And then the tallest of the ones I'm growing, Rockapulco, those are 10 to 20 inches. Now, some other plants that work really well in shade or part shade environments, either in my parkway or from what I see walking around my neighborhood, because most of the parkways are completely shaded by trees, but there are a bunch of heuchera. And even though it's not necessarily grown for the flowers, you can get plants where the leaves are not green. I have grown some that were like a orangey pink. That was really beautiful. A deeper reddish color, and then an almost purple leaning towards black color. And those, because it's the leaves that have the color, it's going to look like that all season long. So I definitely recommend heuchera if you want something that also just constantly has color. Hostas, most of them do come in green, but they do have some that are really almost more white than they are green. There are some beautiful varieties, and they do have smaller ones. So if you are just working with pots, you can grow hostas in pots. In fact, the garden I mentioned with the north-facing balcony, I know that she has hostas in containers, and they look really beautiful. Other plants that you'll commonly see in the shaded areas here, hydrangeas. That was one of the plants that I fried to a crisp on the deck that gets the full afternoon sun. And in fact, on the deck that gets the full morning sun, I had to put it where the light hit first and also the area that got shade first, or else it's still burnt to a crisp. So those are very sensitive to the sun, especially up here. Some of them do say part shade to shade, some do say part sun, but there are a good amount of hydrangeas that will work in more shaded areas. There's also a stilby. I love a stilby. I think I have one in the parkway, but it's very small, and I'm actually surprised it has lived a couple years. But my neighbors have a beautiful one that has pink flowers when it blooms. I also have a lungwort plant in the parkway. If it's still alive, I'll double check when we're down there. But that, again, doesn't bloom all season long. The flowers come up in the spring, but they're this really beautiful pinky purple color. And then the leaves can have white spots on them. So even when it's not flowering, it's still something that doesn't just have solid green leaves. Also, I've grown caladiums. Now, for me, this is just my personal preference, they are a little bit too tropical feeling, but they are very much like heucheras, where they have this beautiful leaf color that's gonna stay like that all season. So I've grown red ones, pink ones, white ones. There really are a bunch to choose from. So when you're thinking about color, don't just focus on the flowers, also think about plants that have colorful leaves. Now, of course, there are many other plants that do well in shade, but those are the ones that I've either grown myself or that I see most often in our neighborhood. If you are just getting started, I would definitely look for impatiens. I feel like those are the easiest for me, where, I mean, I could ignore them and they just keep blooming and looking beautiful, and then begonias. So I would go for those two first, but if you are looking for more colors, again, make sure to look at both the foliage and the flower color on the shaded plants. So now let me go ahead, I'm gonna take you down. I will show you the areas where it's either considered part shade or full shade. I do have plants in the Parkway. There's nothing in my pots yet except for some dead daffodils. And with the garage deck border, I'm still just kind of playing around and figuring out what I want back there. So let's go ahead and head down. These are my front pots. There are the dead daffodils up at the top. I've gotten these pots from so many different places. Every time I've seen a lighter shade of green, I've just gone and grabbed it. So here is where I will put begonias and impatiens. I'm not exactly sure what color scheme I'm going with yet this year, but this area probably gets maybe 3 to 4 hours of direct sun. Right now it's getting some dappled sunlight. This here's the Parkway. Like I said, she's a work in progress. When we moved in, it was basically a bunch of dead boxwoods. Now there are fewer dead boxwoods, but they're still there. Now, all of the tulips that are in here are tulips that were growing in my container garden that I then transplanted down here. So that is really exciting. But I think as you can see, it is pretty shaded. We have a Japanese maple and a maple tree that are both covering this area. But actually on the left side, because the tree is more trimmed, it does get a couple hours of sun, and the hostas are larger over there compared to over here, which is basically all shade. One other issue I have in this area is a lot of roots, so it is hard to dig holes, especially larger holes. So this year I'm doing some new things. One, I'm adding cute decor. I think that I got from Pacia's, and I'm also going to put some pots down here. These were 2 hydrangeas that were upstairs last year. I'm going to grab 2 more, and I think by adding pots in here it's going to be a lot easier, and the sprinkler system that goes off will hit the pots as well, so I don't have to worry too much about watering those. And the shaded spot I'm most excited for is this border along the back of our newly finished garage deck. Look how much space I have to fill. I am hopefully going to do a mix of perennials and annuals, especially as the perennials are a little bit smaller. I've just been playing around, but since these aren't in full bloom yet, it's kind of hard to see, which colors I want where. But I will definitely be planting up this with you soon. Now, this is what's right above this whole back border. We have the slats here, and if they're completely closed, like they are on that side, then it's shade all day here. They never get direct sun. If I do open them, which I will probably leave them open most of the time unless we are out here and want some shade, then I would say it's still a part shaded environment. I don't think it gets enough to really call it part sun, but it does get some sun depending on if I have those open or not. So that's what I'm planning to grow so far in my shaded areas. I really haven't been focusing on them as much as my full sun areas because most of my seedlings are full sun. But as I get these planted up, I will definitely take you along with me. If I get any more shade or part shade plants, I'll let you know as well. Also, list down below your favorite shade or part shade plants. That way we can all share, and maybe there are some more plants that I need to add to my shopping list. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you soon for a lot of planting.